So let's take a look at the B2 First, C1 Advanced and IELTS academic speaking paper in the test simulator. Okay, so let's go ahead and start speaking part 1. Now we'll use B2 First as our example, and when I click start speaking, you'll hear the examiner introduce the speaking section. Now this mirrors what the candidates will experience in the live exam. You'll also see how the turn taking works and the interactions work as well between the examiner, myself, and the other candidate, Alex. So if we click confirm and start speaking, we begin part 1.
Hello, my name is Sarah Jones and this is my colleague, Martin Richards. Can I have your mark sheets, please? Thank you. First, we'd like to know something about you. What do you like to do at the weekend?
And so this is my opportunity to provide my answer. So let's say I've done that. Either the counter will run down to 0 and stop, or I click finish answer.
And what about you, Alex?
I like relaxing, meeting friends, and doing something enjoyable, like going for a walk or watching a film. It depends on how busy my week has been.
Do you enjoy reading books in your spare time?
And again, here is where I'll give my second answer. So you heard from Alex, and now it's coming back to me for my next question. Let's say I've answered, click finish answer.
How did you celebrate your last birthday?
And again, it's come back to me, so I would answer again. And all of the recordings are being saved because they'll later get sent for marking as well.
Alex, are you interested in sport?
Yes. I enjoy playing football with my friends, and I also like to play tennis in the summer when the weather is warmer.
Okay, so we're now back in the B2 First exam and on to speaking part 2. Now, in this part of the exam, candidates are given 2 photographs to compare and a question to answer. Now, this is very similar to the C1 Advanced exam, but of course there, candidates are given 3 photographs and are asked to compare 2 of them, as well as 2 questions to answer. And here again, you'll see how the interaction works between the examiner, ourselves as one candidate, and the other candidate, Alex. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on begin part 2, and it will start with the examiner introducing the section.
Thank you. In this part of the test, I'm going to give you 2 photographs. I'd like you to talk about your photographs on your own for about a minute, and also to answer a question about your partner's photographs. It's your turn first.
So in the test simulator, it will be the learner who goes first in speaking part 2.
Here are your photographs. They show people listening to music in different situations. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say why these people might be enjoying listening to music in these situations. All right?
So there's a short 5-second countdown and then our turn will start. And there you go. We have up to a minute to compare the 2 photographs and answer the question. And our responses are recorded as well, and they're sent on as part of the wider marking mechanism that will mark this particular response in addition to the other responses, so that at the end of the test, candidates will receive a score on all 4 sections. So let's say then that I've finished speaking. I can either wait for the timer to run down to 0. When it gets to 0, it will automatically move on, or I can click finish speaking to end it manually, and then the examiner will come in to give Alex their follow-up question.
Thank you. Alex, do you enjoy listening to music?
Yes, I do. I listen to music quite a lot, especially when I want to relax after a busy day at university. I also listen to music while I study because it helps me to concentrate and stay focused on the work I'm doing.
Thank you. Now, Alex, here are your photographs. They show people on holiday. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say why you think they have chosen to go on these kinds of holiday. All right?
Both photographs show families enjoying time together, but they've chosen different kinds of
So to interrupt Alex, just to say this is the part where Alex will give his response to his question to compare the two photographs. The user is also reminded that they will be asked a follow-up question, so they'll need to listen to Alex, and then it will jump back, as we'll skip to and see in a short while. It will jump back to the examiner who asks us the follow-up question.
Thank you. Which of these holidays would you prefer to go on?
And then we have up to 30 seconds to answer that follow-up question. And then that will take us to speaking part 3. Okay, so we're now in the B2 First speaking part 3, and like the C1 Advanced speaking part 3, this is the collaborative task. So the examiner is going to give Alex and I a question and 5 prompts to go with it. Alex and I will then have a conversation for up to 2 minutes about that question, including the 5 prompts. So let's go ahead and click begin part 3.
Now I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Some people say that children under 16 should not be allowed to use social media, while others disagree. Here are some things they think about, and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task.
And just like in the exam, we're given around 15 seconds to read the question and the 5 prompts before the examiner asks us to have the conversation.
Now, talk to each other about whether children under 16 should be allowed to use social media.
So we're given a countdown timer of 5 seconds. And then we're asked to start the discussion with Alex. Now, before we do, just to explain what happens next. So when I click start discussion with Alex, it will connect me to an AI speaking partner. Now that speaking partner has access to the question and to the 5 prompts. So that allows us to have an exact replica of this exam conversation. For the purposes of this walkthrough, I will show you how this works. So I will play the role of the candidate and we'll hear the responses from the AI speaking partner. And we'll then skip ahead after a few turns to the next part of speaking part 3. Okay, would you like to begin?
Sure, I can start. This topic about social media and young people is really current, isn't it? Looking at the options, I think staying in touch with friends is a big benefit for them, so they don't feel lonely. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm not sure if it's a good enough reason, I guess, because people can stay in touch in all sorts of ways, right? Not just on social media. What worries me more is about sharing too much personal information. What do you think about that?
That's a fair point. They can definitely see each other in person. And you're right, sharing too much info is a really big worry. Like their address or school, they might not know who can see that. Should we look at the one about spending too much time on phones next? That seems connected.
Yeah, sure. So this is one of the other reasons, I guess, why I think that children under 16 shouldn't be allowed to use social media, because it does encourage more phone use, and already people are spending so much time on their phones. What do you think?
I think that's a really common problem. They can get really stuck on those apps, scrolling endlessly instead of doing homework or playing outside. It's like they're always online. Maybe we consider the responsible technology use next? That could be a good way to manage it.
Yeah, I know what you mean, actually. So a big part of it is about education, I guess. So if we can teach children under 16 years old to use technology responsibly, I guess that goes some way, but for me, it's still not enough.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like teaching them is a start, but maybe it's not strong enough against the pressures online. And that brings us to the last one, seeing harmful content.
Thank you.
Okay, so there the examiner interrupts. So we got to the end of 2 minutes before discussing the last prompt. So after 2 minutes, it cuts and then it jumps to the examiner. And now the examiner is going to introduce the sort of second part of the part 3, which is to ask us to make a decision based on a question.
Now you have about a minute to decide which of these things is most important when thinking about whether children under 16 should be allowed to use social media.
And again, we're given a short 5-second countdown. And we're given the same button, Start Discussion with Alex, so we can go ahead and press that, and exactly the same thing will happen, only this time we have 1 minute to try and reach an agreement or a decision. Okay, so for me, the most important thing, I think, is between seeing harmful content and sharing too much personal information when thinking about, at least for me, children not using social media under the age of 16. I can't decide between the two, though. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, those two are definitely big concerns. I think sharing too much personal information can cause problems later on, but seeing harmful content can have really immediate negative impacts. I actually think learning how to use technology responsibly is quite important too, so they can avoid both of those. What do you feel about that one?
Oh, that's actually a good point. So you're saying that learning how to use technology responsibly can help avoid sharing too much personal information and seeing harmful content. I see what you're saying, I think, there.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the end of part 3. So now on to B2 First Speaking part 4, and this is the discussion based on a similar topic or theme to the one that we discussed in part 3. And this doesn't use partner mode, but this rather uses the examiner's question coming to me for a response and then coming to Alex for a response. So you'll be able to see again how this sort of back and forth interaction works. So let's go ahead and begin part 4.
Thank you. Alex, do you think young people spend too much time online nowadays?
Yes, I think many of them probably do.
Is social media a good way for young people to stay in touch with friends?
So again, I'm given slightly longer here to make my response, and just to kind of explain again or in more detail how this works. So you'll hear the examiner asking the question, first of all to Alex, then asking another question to me. But later on, you will hear Alex get asked the question and I get asked on my thoughts as well.
Alex, do you think the internet has improved relationships between people?
Yes, I do. The internet makes it much easier for people to stay in touch, especially if they live far away from each other or have busy lives.
What do you think?
And there you can see an example of Alex being asked a question and then the examiner asking me my thoughts. So again, not only does that replicate the live exam, but also it's encouraging the learner to make sure they're paying attention or listening carefully to what the examiner is asking Alex. Okay, so we're now in the IELTS speaking part 1. So we'll go ahead and click begin speaking test, and it will begin with the examiner introducing the section.
Hello, my name is Sarah Jones. Can you tell me your full name, please?
So you can see it replicates the real live IELTS exam.
Thank you. And can you tell me where you're from? Can I see your identification, please? Thank you, that's fine. Now, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself. Let's talk about your hometown. Can you tell me something about your hometown?
And you can see it's very similar to the B2 First and C1 Advanced part 1s, where we have this natural turn taking. So the examiner will ask a question. We are then invited to speak, in this case for up to 15 seconds per question.
That's great. And what do you like most about it?
And once again, the answers that we're providing here are being recorded and will be sent as part of the final mark that the user will get. Okay, so we're now back over in the IELTS speaking paper where we'll hear the examiner introduce part 2.
Now, I'm going to give you a topic, and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make notes if you wish. Do you understand?
This is us saying we understand.
Okay, here's some paper and a pencil for making some notes. And here's your topic. I'd like you to describe a skill that you would like to learn in the future.
Okay, so as soon as the examiner is finished introducing part 2, the user is then presented with this page. So they have the task card on the left-hand side that contains the exam question and the points that they need to talk about. And then on the right-hand side just here, you can see that there is space for candidates to make notes. So the user in this case can read the task card and make their notes. So let's just put in a couple of examples. Obviously they have up to a minute, and you can see the countdown timer in the top right-hand corner. So we'll wait for that to get to 0, but what we'll see on screen is this note will carry through. So whatever the candidate has written, or the user, sorry, in this case, has written in the Your Notes section, they will be able to view those as the examiner then introduces and asks the candidate to speak, as you'll see now.
All right. Remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Okay, so as you can see, the notes that we had written in the previous bit are still there, so that's what they'll see. They're locked now, so you can't change them, or there's no temptation for the user to go in and make any changes, but they can see them, crucially, which is obviously what they'll be able to do in the live exam as well. And again, you can see the countdown timer that started from 2 minutes, so candidates are given between 1 and 2 minutes, so starts from 2, it can work all the way down to 0, or we have put in this finish answer, so if the candidate does, or the user does finish earlier, they can finish it manually as well. And again, like the other previous section, this is also recorded and is sort of grouped together to be sent to the marking system, which will then mark it and give a global score. So let's go ahead and finish the answer, and you'll see that we'll then jump to part 3.
Thank you. Can I have the booklet, paper and pencil back, please?
That's from the previous part.
Thank you. We've been talking about a skill you would like to learn, and I'd like to discuss with you a few more general questions related to this. First of all, let's consider education and learning. Which skills are most important for young people to learn today?
So you can see again that it's the same back and forth interaction with the examiner that we saw in part 1. The difference being here that the candidate or the user has slightly longer to answer the question, so up to 30 seconds. So again, that timer can run out, or they can click finish answer.
How has the internet changed the way people learn new skills?
And once again, to say that all of the responses here are saved and sent on to the marking system. Just a reference there that the candidate doesn't, or the user doesn't need to do anything in terms of saving it. It will save automatically. So either when the timer gets to 0 or they click finish answer, it's saved.
Do you think that university education should be free?
And like the B2 First and C1 Advanced exam, what happens at the end of the IELTS speaking is the user will click finish simulation. It will then start to mark the whole test, so from each part, the reading, writing, listening and speaking, and then they will be given a downloadable certificate that gives them their IELTS score as well as a breakdown of each section. And that brings us to the end of the speaking test and to the end of the entire test simulator. So just to briefly explain what happens at the end of the speaking test, users will see this screen, so the paper submitted, that's the speaking paper, and then they can click finish simulation. Now what that will do is that will then go to our marking system, which will begin to grade all of the responses and the answers that the users have given across the reading, the writing, the listening, and the speaking sections. It will then return an overall score and a breakdown of each section as well, which users will receive as a downloadable certificate. So I hope you've enjoyed this mini walkthrough series of the test simulator. If you would like to use the test simulator and everything else that's included in English Exam World, then you can go ahead and register today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.